2 years ago, the BMJ called for the decriminalisation of people who use drugs like heroin, cocaine and cannabis. That is, an end to all criminal penalties for non-violent, small-scale use. We also called for investigation of legalisation of drug supply to regain control from violent illegal markets. 3 United Nations treaties require all countries to prohibit drug use, aka the war on drugs. Annual cost, $100 billion. So, is this working? Well, worldwide, about 1 in 20 people took an illegal drug in 2016. In the US now, drug overdose is the leading killer of under 50-year-olds. And the UK has the most drug deaths since records began. 2,593 in the last year statistics were collected. And here there were 14,000 hospital admissions for drug poisoning in the most recent year, up 40% in a decade. And on top of that, a quarter of UK 15-year-olds have ever taken an illicit drug. But these children had no idea what they were taking, its purity or its strength. It's hardly a ringing endorsement for the status quo. Surely regulation can be no worse than this dangerous free-for-all. Drugs are harmful, and the BMJ does not condone taking them. But the UK government's own 2014 survey found that the strictness of drug laws in different countries made no difference to use. But harsh prohibition certainly does encourage harm. It stigmatises users, making it harder for them to get help. It favours stronger drugs in the market. It encourages riskier practices, for example needle sharing, and it impedes evidence-based harm reduction activities. For example, Russia has Europe's biggest HIV epidemic, driven by injecting drug use, but the proved opioid dependency treatment, methadone, is illegal. Here, efforts to open safer consumption rooms for people who inject drugs in Scotland, which rely on de facto decriminalisation, have been thwarted by the UK's drug laws. And even testing partygoers' drugs at festivals and nightclubs, which is likely to save lives, is controversial and far from comprehensive, as it too requires de facto decriminalisation. But change is coming. In 2016, countries lined up at a UN meeting to say that the war on drugs was lost. Rather than a drug-free world, the unlikely focus of previous UN meetings, what about a world free of avoidable harm? A realistic approach to maximise health, minimise harm, uphold human rights and avoid moral judgments about adults who use drugs. Some countries have removed criminal penalties for all drug possession, for example Portugal in 2001. Deaths and AIDS transmission have fallen hugely without any general increase in drug use. Decriminalisation, permitted under UN treaties, is not an end in itself, but it makes it easier to offer other health-promoting and harm-reducing interventions. The BMJ is far from alone in calling for decriminalisation. So too do many UN bodies and the World Health Organization, and many former as well as serving politicians, crime fighters and doctors, and the UK government's own Independent Advisory Committee on Drug Misuse. Despite drug policy being a health issue, most doctors' organisations have no stance, but the Royal Society for Public Health, the Faculty of Public Health, the BMA and the Royal College of Physicians most recently have called for decriminalisation. But simply decriminalising use and leaving supply in criminal hands could be said a coward's way out. Some countries have established legal markets, such as non-medical cannabis in some US states and now Canada. And we believe we have an obligation to investigate this regulation and to collect evidence on its benefits and harms and to act on that evidence. You can see our work so far and keep up to date with the BMJ's call for reform at bmj.com/war-on-drugs. Thanks very much.